So, what do you think is the absolute peak of human civilization? One author, Hundun Yuan Chu, has a pretty wild answer. They've laid out a blueprint for a future society, and let me tell you, it's one of the most radical ideas I have ever come across. Let's dive into what they call the highest level of civilization. Right off the bat, the core idea just grabs you: a world with no laws, no nations, and no money. Just let that sink in for a second. Everything that structures our modern world, just gone. We're not talking about a little reform here. This is a complete reset. In this, of course, raises a huge question, one the author actually tackles head on. Is this a recipe for instant, total chaos? Or could it somehow be the key to unlocking our ultimate potential? Let's unpack the logic and see how this could possibly work. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we have to look at everything that gets tossed out the window. And as you're about to see, it goes way, way beyond just laws and money. The sheer scale of this is, well, it's staggering. It's not just the big picture stuff like nations and currency. The author is talking about getting rid of marriage, families, passports, even professional licenses. Think about that. No driver's license, no degree on the wall. Every single piece of paper that defines who we are and what we're allowed to do, it would all just vanish. Right, and that brings us back to the most obvious problem, doesn't it? Without a driver's license, what stops a terrible driver from getting on the road? Without laws, what stops crime? The author knows this is the first thing we'd ask, and they have a very, very specific answer. And that answer isn't some new rule or a different system. The solution, according to this text, isn't external at all. It's an internal one, a fundamental change to human nature itself. The entire philosophy hangs on this one single concept, usiuwa. It basically describes a state of total selflessness, of having no ego. And here's the core argument. If every single person acts from a place of pure, genuine goodness and love, well, then external rules just become pointless. You don't need a law against hurting someone if that thought would never even cross your mind. So this is the big switch. Our current world, you could argue, runs on self-interest and competition, and that's exactly why we need all these external rules. But this future world, it would run on selflessness and sincerity. It's about swapping out our external rulebook for a completely reliable internal compass. Let's bring this back to that driver example, because it makes it so clear. As the author puts it, an unskilled driver would simply never get behind the wheel. Not because they're afraid of a law, but because their love for others is literally greater than their own desire to drive. That's the principle in action. But how do you actually create a whole society of selfless people? I mean, that sounds pretty tough. The author doesn't just hope it happens. They propose a very specific social structure designed to nurture this exact mindset. It's called the second homeland model. So here's how it works. First, everyone is organized into these small communities, or second homelands. Within those communities, every single need is met. Food, housing, healthcare, you name it. Money and private property are completely gone. But here's the most radical part. Every 3 years, you have to move to a totally different community, somewhere else in the world. The claimed results of this system are just enormous. The constant rotation is supposed to completely erase national and cultural divisions. And if everyone's needs are met, what's the motivation for crime or corruption or war? Ultimately, the author's point is that real happiness isn't found in what you can get for yourself, but in this completely selfless, shared way of life. This brings us to the final and maybe the most striking part of this whole idea, the author's absolute unwavering confidence in this vision. Yeah, this isn't presented as just an interesting theory. The author is crystal clear. They claim to have thought of every possible problem and that this is the only viable path forward for humanity, period. And they don't hold back at all. The author puts it in the plainest terms possible, making this incredible claim that no one on Earth has thought more deeply about these issues and no plan could possibly be better than theirs. It actually goes a step further. They bring up the idea of an Eastern sage, a kind of prophesied enlightened figure, and say that even if this person showed up, they couldn't improve on this theory. And all of this leads to a final, completely uncompromising conclusion. The author believes humanity has a choice, and there is only one correct path to a bright future: to do exactly as they say. So there you have it, a vision of society built on a complete transformation of the human heart, one designed to end all our conflicts and inequalities. And the question it leaves us with is simple, but it's huge. Is this a forgotten blueprint for utopia? Or is the one thing it requires a fundamental change in our very nature, the exact thing that makes it an impossible dream?